Welcome to the Organic Wine Podcast. Hi, I'm Adam Huss, coming to you from Los Angeles, California. If you've listened to this podcast before, you know that I often include an appeal to buy my guest's wine or Centralis wine, my wine, as a way to support them and this podcast and to benefit the health of the environment, which we all know needs our support more than ever right now. But the truth is that I don't think I or my guests have sold a single bottle of wine because of this podcast. And my guest for this episode wrote a book about why that is the case. Professor Maggie Delmas refers to most of us as convenient environmentalists. That is, our self-interest is still the number one priority when making environmentally positive consumption decisions. Hey, no judgment. I'm the same way. In other words, we buy wine because it tastes good to us primarily, and it's a great bonus if it was also grown and distributed in a way that benefits the environment. Professor Delmas's book is called The Green Bundle, Pairing the Market with the Planet, and it's a must-read for anyone trying to sell any environmentally friendly products, including wine. It's as much a book about human psychology as it is a deep study of marketing and consumer motivation in relation to green products. But that's not all. Professor Delmas has just written a paper in which she analyzes multiple studies she conducted on comparing the scores by the most prominent critics in France and California of over 200,000 wines over a 20-year period. The results? Certified biodynamic and organic wine tastes better. That's right. Biodynamic and organically grown wines have received statistically significantly higher scores than conventionally grown wine across the last 2 decades. And this is the most comprehensive and conclusive study of its kind that I'm aware of. I hope you enjoy this interview with Professor Maggie Delmas, Professor of Management at the Institute of Environment and Sustainability at UCLA and the Anderson School of Management. And I hope you have a much more compelling reason to buy some delicious biodynamically and organically grown wine, because it tastes great. Enjoy! One small note of apology for a noise issue that you can hear as Professor Delmas speaks. It's something that wasn't present in the interview but showed up when I went back to edit the recording. I was unable to get rid of it, and I hope you can enjoy the interview despite of it. My apologies. Hey, all right. Well, welcome, Maggie. Thank you so much for doing this.
I'm very happy to be here.
So let's just start with who you are, or what your job is. Professor of Management at the Institute of Environment and Sustainability at UCLA and the Anderson School of Management.
Yes.
And lovely. So, and I will say, you've done some very interesting studies that apply very directly to wine in some cases and very close to wine in other cases. The reason I found you was the most recent study that you did where you compared data from wine critics and discovered that biodynamic and organic wine got better ratings. Is that a good summary of that study?
Yes, absolutely. Yes, we looked at wines in France. We looked at 128,000 wines that were rated by these 3 main magazines there, Gourmillot, Bethlen du Sauve, and Gilbert Gaillard. And what we found is that those that were either organic or biodynamic, that were certified with these labels, had better ratings, about 6 points higher ratings in the sample.
You said 128,000 wines.
Yes.
So that's a pretty big sample size.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And when were these wines produced? Was this over the last how many years, or what were there vintages that were it was from?
We're looking at about kind of 95 to 2015 about.
Okay, so a wide range of vintages then too.
Yes.
Almost 20 more than 20 years. No, 20 years. If my math is not that great, but about 20 years. So that seems like very good evidence for that claim. Did you have an inkling about that? Like what promoted that? I mean, what inspired that study for you?
Oh, well, actually, this is, we've done another study in California. So we're kind of, gathering evidence in the main regions of, the main wine producing regions of the world. We started with California, where we looked at 74,000 wines from that were rated by the Wine Spectator, Wine Enthusiast, and Robert Parker. And we did find, kind of similar things. There it was about 4 points higher,
Okay.
the kind of green wines. And the question was, is it just about California? Is it just about these specific magazines? Is it, or is it a story that is beyond that? And so we decided to go to see what happened in France. And as you guessed, I am French. From my
I was
accent,
gonna say,
I can't hide it, can't change it. So sorry for the listeners who are not used to the accent, but
oh no, I think it's
so
definitely
I was on sabbatical in France, and that's what the fantastic opportunities that we get as faculty members to spend time, somewhere else to do research. And with my collaborator, co-author Olivier Gergaud, we decided to look at French wines too. And then the story is similar. We find that these wines that are certified tend to be rated higher. And so how did that
right.
started? Was kind of a while ago. I was at UC Santa Barbara at the time, and I was talking to someone. His name is Jim Fetzer, who is from the family of Fetzer wines.
Sure.
Very interested in sustainability and organic wines, and he said, I would like to start a new winery that is kind of sustainable, but I can't use organic. I don't like the label. People don't really like the label. It's not, it's not good quality wine. There's some kind of stigma associated with it. So I want to use biodynamic instead. I was like, what is it?
Oh,
And so he explained to me that biodynamic agriculture is a more kind of a holistic approach that includes animals and of course without chemicals, but it's organic plus, including kind of an entire farming system that is very similar to the way practices were, kind of maybe 100, 200 years ago, where farmers were looking at the cycle of the moon to kind of decide when they should cut the vines and when they should use kind of different practices based on kind of this holistic approach. So this is interesting, but okay. And then we kind of started to think about this of what type of label should a company use when they want to communicate about sustainability? What are the benefits of certification? Is it about the practices? Is it about getting third-party certification, someone coming to your farm and figure, and auditing you that helps you kind of do things the right way? What exactly are these, certification about, and how are they perceived by consumers? So then we kind of did a survey of wineries, asking them, about their practices, sustainable practices in California. And what we found, which was very surprising to us, is that only 1/3 of the wineries that had actually adopted certification, that were certified organic or biodynamic, only 1/3 would put this on their bottle, would label it on their bottle. So certification is about 15%, 20%, 30%, depending on the type of certification. More expensive than not doing it, right? It adds to the cost of growing grapes. And then we found out, okay, they get this cost, they get through certification, and yet they don't want to talk about it to consumers.
right.
And that was very, very strange to us. Right? I've never seen that in I'm looking at, in
Other industries.
It's about sustainability, and I look at various sectors. I've never seen that. Firms that actually don't talk about their sustainable practices. It's very rare. Right. So that was kind of the puzzle. What is going on out there?
Well, and that led you to write a book about it, right?
Yes. So I wrote this book. The title is The Green Bundle: Pairing the Market with the Planet. And the book is really about the fact that consumers are willing to do the right thing. They are willing to, and they really want to do something for the environment. They want to change their behavior. And when you ask people, most people are going to say, yes, I think we need to do something. I want to do something. 75% about, and the various surveys are similar numbers. And then when you go to the stores, when you see the numbers in terms of the percentage of product that are more sustainable, that have certified labels, you get to less than 10%. So there is this big gap between what people say they want to do and what they actually do in the marketplace. And I feel like if all of us want to change, to improve our footprint, to reduce our impact on the planet, we need to kind of start with what we consume. And what we realize is that people are not really ready to do if there's any trade-off between sustainability, the public goods, good for the planet, good for the environment, and their own private benefit when they purchase a product. Let's say the quality is lower, or the price is higher, the quality is lower, then it's not working that well. So we need to find ways to combine the public good, the environment, benefit to the environment, and the private benefit for the consumer. So public and private. So that was kind of the concept of the green bundle. You need to bundle the public, or the public good, and the private benefit. And one way to do this is to find products that, at the same time, are better for the environment and increase quality.
Right. I was going to say, it sounds like you've both posed the problem and solved it immediately after by finding these studies and pulling this data for the wine quality assessment in France and California.
I wish this was that easy and that the solution. This is one example where actually it worked. I mean, it's not that simple, but wine.
Well, at least for wine, right? Yeah.
Where you can actually bridge what the winemakers say. You can bridge this gap where you do have a product that's, when you make it more sustainable, you get to a higher quality product. So what we interviewed winemakers, and what they say is, well, it's easier to work with the grape if there are no chemicals on it. Some of the vines, because you produce a little bit less, maybe there is more sugar to the grapes that remain on the vine. Maybe the soil, because there is more organic content, because you have not kind of killed the organic content with pesticides, then the soil is more fertile. So there might be some reasons to think that organic practices lead to higher quality grapes, and higher quality grapes should lead to higher quality wine. So that's kind of what winemakers are saying. And so kind of the question is, okay, they are doing it for the quality, but they still don't want to talk about it to their consumers, because they believe that consumers don't think this way, and consumers are a little bit confused of what these wines are about, and that there is this negative stigma that maybe came from the early days of organic winemaking, was hippie wine, not really associated with kind of the big if I say in French terms, like the big French chateau that definitely at the beginning didn't adopt sustainable practices. So there might be this confusion. There might be this confusion in the mind of consumers, and that might be the reason why only 1/3 of wineries that have adopted sustainable practices and certified them are not communicating about it on the bottle.
It also, my theory is that it also has to do with the labeling laws about organic wine, and that, you can be the best organic farmer in the vineyard, but unless you certify your winery, you can't say that on the label. You can't say made with organic grapes. You can list it as you can list organic grapes as an ingredient on the back label, But you can't say organic wine or organic grapes unless you certify both the vineyards and the winery. And then if you say organic wine, which is, the big one that people like, if you're a consumer and you know nothing about it, to you, everything is organic wine, and you see that on a label, that also means no sulfites were added. And we know, unless we know that's a big risk in winemaking, that you're rolling the dice with what could happen to the wine, and as it lives in bottle, how it's stored, it's not going to be as stable, or just in the winemaking, it can produce flavors. And so I mean, that was my experience as well 20 years ago with, whatever was available that was called organic wine, because you wanted to try organic wine. And if you're just shopping at the grocery store for organic wine, it's going to be $15 stuff that didn't use sulfites, and a lot of times the quality was not that great, honestly. But that
Right.
doesn't mean, but that doesn't, yeah, but that the reality
So
is,
I think what
yeah,
you're raising a very important point, which is that in the United States, the label is confusing because you use
yes,
organic for two very different processes, right? So
right,
you have wine made out of organically grown grapes. That's one process, and then you have organic wine that includes both. Organic grapes and no sulfites basically in the winemaking process. And that
right,
definitely could result, as you say, in wine that evolves organically, not always in the direction that you would like it to go.
right,
So, so that's creating some confusion because the wine made out of organically grown grapes doesn't have this downside.
right,
But yet people just see organic; they don't really understand the subtleties, right?
right,
Of
exactly,
And that has been, I think, a very big issue. What these labels are supposed to do? They're supposed to reduce the information asymmetry between the producer, who knows about sustainable practices, and the consumer, who doesn't know anything and want just to get a very clear, very simple signal in the store, so they don't have to, kind of investigate too much, and they don't have to go to the farm and to the vineyard to figure out how things are done. And so
right,
in that case, actually, it's not clear to me that the signal, that the label is reducing this information asymmetry. I think it's creating more confusion than it's helping. So
yeah,
that's a problem that is clearly specific to the United States. In
right,
Europe, I think things are a little bit clearer on what is organic and what is not. What they call it bio in
right.
France, and what is biodynamic. So I think
Yeah.
we'll have less of that confusion. And maybe that helped a little bit the Europeans to be a little bit more interested in the label, actually.
Yeah, that
But
makes
what you're
sense.
saying is, there could be some practices that are sustainable and are not certified, and then you, of course, cannot label it. But you also, and that's, I think, what is interesting about the French study as compared to the California study we did before, is that in France, you have this label that some wineries put on their bottle that is called reasonable wine, kind of lutte raisonnée in French, meaning that these are people who say we don't want to go to the extreme of having to get through this organic certification with third-party certification, all of this. We are, kind of reasonable in our approach. We're not extremists. We are doing what is required. We're never kind of using chemicals when not needed, and therefore we have this label of reasonable wine. And so that kind of allowed us to see, okay, what is the actual value of certification, of third-party certification, which is very constraining because you need to wait 3 years before you can get the certification. And then if there is any really big problem, a pest, or that you want to really address with chemicals, then you lose the certification. So
Right,
what is the benefit of certification versus having a more flexible approach? And what we find in our study is that in terms of how these wines are rated by experts, it looks like the third-party certification is the only one that makes a difference. That
right,
wine that are labeled reasoned wine are actually, or reasonable. I don't know how you might translate it in different ways, but they are not getting the same push, kind of in terms of association with, how
Quality.
scores from the rate.
Right. Is that true? Was there a comparison in California? Because I know, we use the term here like practicing or transitioning organic, where you're not yet certified or you don't care to get certified, but you're using the practices of organic or biodynamic farming.
But we haven't looked into this. I mean, you're right. In California, there are a bunch of different certifications, right, that are not
Right.
third-party certified. So we haven't looked into these.
Well, part of my thought about that is, a lot of times some of these things are economically based, and if you're in a less economically viable place, like if you're in the California example that I could give was like if you're in Modesto farming organically versus Napa farming organically, you're not going to get the same bang for your buck, and therefore it might not matter to you to get certified, but that also signifies that the land where you are might not be as optimal for grape growing. It just might be a poor quality land, which is why you might be producing poor quality wine. Not to diss
I
on
think
Modesto or anything like that, but you know what I mean?
this is a really good point in terms of, well, what's the selection effect here in terms of who is choosing to get certified, and who is choosing to get biodynamic, for example. So
Right.
I think if you have high margins, you're more likely to be able to invest in these practices,
Right.
the certification. So that's kind of a little bit of a bias that is kind of difficult to control for. That makes, those that, and we see kind of, the French study also shows a difference between organic certification and biodynamic certification, with biodynamic getting a higher rating, higher scores, as from the experts. And I think that's also a selection effect, that those who get to decide to go biodynamic, since it's more, kind of labor intensive, tend to be slightly different in terms of their the characteristics of the vineyards.
Yeah. Well, let's jump then to the marketing of this. Your book, really, The Green Bundle, is wonderful, and I highly recommend it to anybody who's working with organic or biodynamic farming in viticulture or in any business. But since this is a wine podcast, I'm just talking to anybody who's interested in these things. It's a must read, because it really breaks down the issues with marketing and the mistakes that so many of us make. Like, I've made 100 of the mistakes that you point out in this book, and it's just so eye-opening. It's really a marketing book, even though you're approaching it from an academic standpoint, but it really is like, if we actually want to make a difference in the world with our products, we have to have the knowledge that you've put into this book. It's just really fantastic. I can't recommend it enough.
Thank you.
Yeah, and so can we just ask, this is answered in the book in many ways, but why do many green communication efforts fail?
Yeah, so I think what we've seen in the past, and there are plenty of fun examples of that, is people thinking that consumers are going to just want to pay for the environment, for the public good. And so
Right.
focusing mostly on trying to get this, kind of dark green consumer, and thinking that we're all going to become like this, like, the Berkeley type that wear Birkenstocks and bikes to work and eats only, vegan. And, eventually we might go there, but, there's a transition. And so in the meantime, people are not as willing to sacrifice, kind of anything in terms of most people, I would say. So I call us, because I'm part of that category, the convenient environmentalists. So we're doing the right thing. We're buying products if it's convenient. So how do we make it convenient to consumers to kind of increase the market share of green products, to kind of target that, most important part of the consumer base? And so what I'm saying in the green bundle is that you need to bundle the private benefits, so the things that are good for you as a consumer, to the environmental benefits. How do you do that? So one obvious example with the wine is quality. So find products that are good in terms of quality as well as good for the environment. And there are many products that that can do that. If you think about Tesla, kind of the electric car, it's an example. People actually buy Tesla because they are excellent cars in terms of acceleration, in terms of aesthetics, in terms of the electronics, everything. Really because it's good for the environment. It's a plus. It's great, but it's foremost. I mean, the people who were the initial buyers were really into the quality of the car. So then another element that you can use and I have 5 different ways to kind of bundle the private benefit with the public good. The other one, apart from quality, is status. So, for example, if what we call a conspicuous consumption, and that would be where you look good because you are kind of buying green products. And it's possible that you could do it with wine, actually. You could think, well, if I have to buy a bottle of wine and I go to, kind of these friends, I mean, after the pandemic is all over, I guess I bring a bottle of wine at a dinner party, then, I could decide to bring a green, an organic wine just to show that, this is me, I'm green, I care about the environment, and that's kind of who I am, and I'm showing this through my purchase or through my gift to my friends. So that's status. That's the second one. And you could say, with the example of Tesla, that also, kind of Tesla is a car that has a high status. And that's therefore something you're showing off your wealth and also you're kind of caring for the environment. Then there's money, which is the third element of the bundle where, of course, if you're saving money, you're more likely to be, purchasing green products. Example being, about LED lights or, so energy efficiency. Definitely, that's kind of a bit of an easier, element to make. But in general, green products are a little bit more expensive. So that's kind of more the exception than the rule. And then otherwise, you have health. Health is a very, very, very important element of the green bundle. If you prove, and that has been the case with organic product, not really with wine, but with other organic products. And I think one of the reasons why the organic market has grown so fast is because it's good for your health. You don't put all the chemicals in your body by eating, strawberries or tomatoes, and therefore it's good for your health. And that connection, when you make it, is very, very strong. With wine, the problem is that it's an alcoholic beverage. Therefore, most people would think that it's not good for your health. And so that's kind of the issue: is how do you reconcile one of the main benefits of organic produce with wine?
Do you think it
discussions about sulfites and people who are allergic or not allergic and so on.
Right.
That's kind of a little bit more difficult to make the claim with wine. I'll just finish and then we can go back to that because
yeah.
An interesting. Please. And the last element of the bundle is emotion.
Emotion.
Of getting people more emotional with kind of their purchase and how they perceive, the product and its connection to the environment. And I think that's where actually for winemakers, storytelling and emotion and getting people to be, kind of feeling closer to nature with their wine purchase is probably one of the, the most effective ways. Since some of these labels are not super effective and sometimes, some of these organic and even biodynamic labels are not incredibly easy for people to understand. So these are kind of 5 elements of the bundle. So we have quality, we have status, we have money, we have health, and then we have emotion.
And this is the egotistic benefits, basically, versus the altruistic benefits.
Yes, the co-benefits, yes.
Right.
I mean, you could think the emotion, you could get it a little bit more altruistic. Emotion is empathy, so there is a little bit.
Oh, that's true, yeah.
You could work on that, yeah.
It's that blurred line where it feels good to do good kind of thing.
Yes, exactly.
Well, the question that I was that popped into my head was more about in talking about the health benefits of
Mm-hmm.
wine. Um, the idea that when you're removing harmful pesticides from the environment, there's obviously a broader health concern, not necessarily that the wine that you're putting into your body is more healthy for you because it's still an alcoholic product, but that the world that you're creating with that purchase is a world where harmful synthetic chemicals have been removed from the agriculture and therefore are not in the air, or not in the water stream, or not poisoning the workers that work in those vineyards. And so there's a broader health appeal. Do you think that is effective, or do you need the immediate, this benefits my health as I consume it,
Yeah,
to
so
make it
I
effective?
think for most kind of sustainable products, or this is the case, right? You're buying products that have less chemicals in the during the production process and are better for the again, it's a public good thing. It's good for everyone. So whether you want to pay for the public good is kind of a question, right? If you don't get an immediate benefit, will you be willing to pay for the public good? So I think that's the difficult thing to get people to be willing to do. But with wine, I think what we have is also the winemaker. Why would they adopt these practices? I think one of the main reason, apart from the quality of the wine, is the health benefits. If you're growing grapes and you're in an environment that doesn't have as many chemicals, it's good for you, it's good for your employees, it's good for your children.
Right.
So we did actually, did a survey of, kind of winemakers in California, and found that those who have children and intended to pass down their wineries to their children were more likely to adopt organic practices. So it
Yeah, I'm
makes
not
sense,
surprised
right? I
at
mean,
all. Yeah.
and that's a big health benefit for those who are working and living in in the vines.
Yeah, I mean, I have a sense I mean, that's been my intuitive sense as well, just in talking to organic farmers, is a number one concern just at the beginning of their journey was thinking about, I'm going to be living here, my kids are going to be playing in this vineyard, what kind of environment do I want to create for my family? And organic was, that's why they went that
And that's
direction.
kind of the solution. So so there are many reasons why then you don't need to label it, to your consumers, because you might do it for other reasons, not just for your consumer, but you might do it for you as a grape grower. And you might do it for, so you might do it for the quality of the wine. And then if all of these things go well, you don't need really to talk about sustainability or to label it, because you're already, you're getting a wine that's better and it's good for your health. So you get all the benefits. And then therefore you're, kind of this third party certification is worth it. So that these are, I think, the main, kind of the two main elements that get. So in France, there was this in 2014 in the Bordeaux area, which is a very, very, of course, one of the biggest regions of winemaking in France. They had to evacuate a school, children and teachers, because they were spraying the vines around, just before, and the fields, and then kind of they all had headaches and throwing up and all that stuff. So they had to be evacuated. So that was kind of a wake up call for the wine industry there, and saying, what do we do for our community? How
Right.
we change our practices, and that has kind of led to a change of how they were looking at the environment and sustainable practices after this event. It was a big deal, actually.
Well, so if we're talking about wine, what kind of appeals? I mean, you alluded to the emotional appeal for consumers. Is that the most effective one, or what kind of appeals are the most effective when it comes to wine, from what you've found?
So I think the storytelling, and that's what wineries are doing, talking about kind of who they are and how and why, kind of grape growing and winemaking matters to them, the story of where they come from and all of that. I think it's really important. And kind of how you get people to, visit the winery and talk about this on site. So the question is, how do you get to communicate this on a bottle, right?
Right.
And so I think that's the main challenge. So I'm not saying anything that they don't know about this.
Yeah.
What I see though is a big change in how the the younger generation perceives that. So I think there was kind of this reluctance to look at the environment and to look at sustainable practices as something beneficial. I think, and we did some surveys of kind of the 18 to 20, 21 to kind of 30, 35, year old consumers. And what we find is that they are willing to try new things. So they are more excited about the idea of organic practices. So they are willing to try it as a fun thing, but they are not willing to pay a high premium. So that's kind of the drawback. So there is kind of a change, a generational change in what consumers want related to wine, but they don't want to pay, the kind of the premium. So that's kind of
I found that as well. What I mean, my guess about how to communicate that on the label is that you kind of have to build a brand, and then when people see your brand, they associate it with the green practices that you've built that brand upon. Is that is that a real solution?
I think that's, yeah. I mean, some of the wineries, although, were reluctant to do that, right?
Yeah.
About Fetzer and Bonterra, they decided to have two different brands, not to make sure they're not two very different approaches. But yes, I mean, engaging, the consumers in the story and getting them involved, engaged in the practices, telling them, what is happening and is a good way to keep that. Everybody's talking about authenticity. And I think in the case of winemaking, it's kind of clearly one place where things, can be very authentic, because you're talking about farming. And so that's something that's, that can be, definitely communicated. But you need to get people to go there. It's just hard to do it without people actually visiting, I think.
Yeah, that makes sense. I've noticed that as well. Being a virtual winery myself, I one of the features, you have a whole list of features that brands or products need to. Maybe features is the wrong word, but they need to abide by to do well in terms of selling their green approach. And I mean, some of those are accurate claims, no greenwashing, full transparency, clarity about effectiveness, and the what's in it for me. And then you gave that list, the sort of the appeal to the ego. You do talk about transparency a lot, and I just wanted to dig into that a little bit. What kind of transparency?
I think that's so. I started talking about the green bundle as the kind of the elements of the green bundle. But if you think about how kind of information comes to us, when you look at it, first you need to kind of recognize the information, understand it, and that's a little bit the problem with the current labels. But the first thing is, okay, what is this? You look at a package and say, what does it mean? Do I understand it? Do I trust it? And that's where the transparency is important. And, the label need to be clearly saying what they mean, what they mean, be understandable without having to kind of look somewhere else. And you have to trust it, right? Of course, if you come from the government versus if it comes from a company, it's a little bit of a different way of looking at it. So that's the first kind of step. So once you get that, and what we found is that people tend to recognize in general, labels that are on different products. So in general, except maybe in wine. The organic label is well recognized by most people because you see it on so many products. So that helps in general, except in wine where it confuses people more. But so you need to have this label that is, kind of clearly indicating what people think. And biodynamic is not really perfect either, although it doesn't have the disadvantage of organic, which means two different things. Biodynamic for most people doesn't mean what we think it means, right? So we did a survey, which was really fun. We asked people, oh, what do you mean? See this word biodynamic, what do you think it means? And one word, so we had the survey. So everybody had to just say, kind of give one word as a response. And most people would say things like bioengineered, sci-fi. So we had categories. So they think about kind of something completely different than what we think about when we think about biodynamic. And
right.
and we had people said BS, and so they kind of couldn't. Those who had never seen it did not understand it when they first saw it. They could not, kind of connect that specific word with farming and sustainable practices. So that's a little bit of an issue. I think it's kind of lost in translation from, kind of Rudolf Steiner's, I'm not sure how they say this in Austrian, in German, but that might be the same word. But in English, it doesn't really translate that well. So it has that's a disadvantage in terms of people not being able to recognize it immediately. The advantage, though, is when they are explained, they'll remember it because it's such a very unique term, right? So that's the problem of, some of the labels, kind of recognition, transparency, and then we don't want greenwashing, right? I feel like some of the lack of transparency and some of these labels, the fact that there's so many labels, and it's not just in wine, it's in most products, is creating more confusion than it is helping. So you have so many, fair trade, this and that, and so many different labels on a product. You have 15 labels. You're like, well, what is this, right? And that kind of goes to greenwashing. That's and problem of this label self kind of self-certified or declared label in France is that you have a bunch of these labels that are not third-party certified that lead to greenwashing. And then people are confused, even more confused. And then they don't trust these labels anymore. So that's the main issue. So you really need to have kind of label you understand and you trust. And then that's the bundle kind of motivation part. You need to be willing to pay for the premium, right? You need to find ways to get the consumer to be interested in that label. It's not just sufficient to have a label. You need to kind of bridge this information you provide to some kind of private benefit. Again, quality, status, money, health, and emotion. So it's kind of these two elements. If you don't have any, if you're not credible, then it's not going to work. In some case, and I think that's what's happening in wine, you just should not talk about sustainability anyway. I don't think it adds too much. You just talk about, kind of the quality of your practices and how good they are for the wines, for the grapes, for the planet. But you don't really. I'm not sure the label is actually that's useful for the consumer.
Right. Well, so the other aspect that's a big part of your book is the element of price and what people, the cost of these products and the pricing of the products. But I'm wondering, is there a synergy between transparency and price? Do consumers want transparency about how much it costs to produce this and therefore what the retail price is? Like, do you know Everlane, the fashion company from and how they, like, on each article of clothing they'll show, like, materials cost, labor cost, shipping cost, total cost to produce equals $14, retail price $50. So you see that they've done like a 2.5% to 3% markup from their cost of goods, or not 2.5, 2.5 to 3 times markup of whatever their cost of good was. Do people care about that? I mean, I know it worked for them, but maybe that's not the only reason that they had success. Have you looked into that at all?
Well, I mean, so that's kind of more on the social side, right? Do people care about how things are produced in the supply chain in different countries? How much are people paid? So this is
Mhm.
kind of more and more important for consumers, right? To kind of know if if people are paid minimum wage. So a lot of companies are starting to really be clearer on these elements. So this was something that a few years ago people were not really discussing much, but now you can't really have the environment. I mean, sustainability means both the environment and social component of it. So it's hard to disentangle them. So if a company is, kind of very advanced in terms of the environmental claims, they need to be also kind of paying attention to how they treat their workers and kind of social issue and what they do with their supply chain. So I think these two issues are now very, very related um,
Right.
in how companies are evaluated. So when we talk about ESG, how publicly traded companies are evaluated now by socially responsible investors. They think about the environment, S, social, and governance, and they rarely, except for climate, rarely disentangle them. So
Hmm.
companies need to kind of have that now
Yeah.
in their approach to be clear on that. Whether they need to be as clear as detailing exactly what percentage of the cost is allocated to their workers. I don't know. I haven't tried. I haven't tested that in surveys. But fair
Okay.
trade is doing some of that, right? Fair trade is doing some of it, saying we are paying a specific
Right. It's a living wage, at least. I mean, they
wage.
don't
Yeah,
say what that means in that specific country, but they at least guarantee that it's a living wage.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yes. So
Yeah.
I think now these issues are way very, way related, and it's going to be important for any company to make sure they address both.
Well, this is really great. I mean, again, I can't recommend the book enough. And it sounds like you wrote a book about how to sell environmentally friendly products using appeals to self interest. And then you did a study showing that wine tastes better if it's grown organically or biodynamically. So it just makes me think you might have an ulterior motive here of selling organic wine. Is that, do you secretly own a organic
No, I
winery or
don't.
anything?
I don't. I don't. I don't have any kind of of interest here. I just have of a general interest in uh, in helping others to reduce their footprint and my own footprint on the
Yeah.
planet. But hopefully, if I think this is one of the cases where things go in the right direction. And so what I feel is that we should tell that story if it's if and make sure this is the story, and that's why we kind of wanted to do this scientifically in testing kind of the relationship between certification, sustainable certification, and quality. So as scientists, we want to make sure that the story is has scientific basis, and then then people can use that if it helps them.
That's great. Well, how can people find your book or learn more about what you're doing? Or I don't know if you want people to get in touch with you, but
Yeah, I
any
mean,
info?
I'd love people to contact me, of course. My book is on Amazon, The Green Bundle, Pairing the Market with the Planet. So that's easy to get. And
Yeah,
sure, I mean, I definitely value talking with people about their own, kind of their own strategies and learning from them. I feel like, the it's much better. And that's why with the this study on wine, we've, interviewed and surveyed a lot of wineries because I think that's how, we learn. So definitely we
yeah.
have
It sounds like
people.
people care. We just have to get better at, and your book really helps with this to get better at communicating our
Hmm.
message, basically.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well,
really
thank you
appreciate
so
it.
much for having me. It's been
Absolutely. Thank you so much. It's been great. This is couldn't have asked for a better guest on the Organic Wine Podcast.
thank you.
Honestly. Thank you.